Okay, so when we look at the nose, something we talked about a little bit, but we'll mention it again because it bears repeating. When we look at the nose, it's at let's get it there. There we go. It's at a different perspective. Of course, it's attached to the head, but the head's going vertically more or less, and the nose isn't. So when we start to get into perspectives, funny things happen. So when we look straight on, it's as you would suspect. However, since it's coming out towards us, we oftentimes have a devilish time getting it to feel like it's coming off the paper, coming off the canvas. So how it separates out is a little bit tricky. Mostly we use that undershadow of the nose to help it pop out. There's other little tricks of the trade you can do to get it to come out, but we want to have it stack up towards us and then go back and out away from us. And that can be tricky, but every position can be tricky. So since it's coming out already at a slightly foreshortened angle to us, if we look up, if that head looks up, look how quickly that bridge of the nose disappears or shortens. So my rule of thumb is when the head looks up, I see how close the tip, it could be the highlight, it could be a shadowy darkness underneath, whatever landmark you find on that end of the nose. How close is that end of the nose to the eye line? Notice here, it's pretty close to the eye line, isn't it? If we didn't know that, we'd probably draw it down and flatten it. And that happens a lot where we'll get something that we're underneath, head that we're underneath, and we'll get the eyes or eye sockets. The ears will be way down below. And then we'll do this and draw the nose like it was like this. And we won't know why it looks funny. So when the nose goes up, how close does the nose get to the eyes? And of course, it can overlap the eyes. And then when it goes down, well, it's foreshortened. So when it goes down a little bit, you're actually seeing it get a little longer visually. But the face is already foreshortening significantly. So when it goes down, how close does it get to overlapping the mouth, the chin, and so on? So we want to look at how close the nose gets to the lips or whether it overlaps the lips, and how close the nose gets to the eyes and overlaps the eyes or the eye line. So that's our little trick. Oh, and then the last thing is when it turns this way, since the nose is in the middle of a much wider landscape, it's that ziggurat idea. We've got the cheeks here, and we've got the wedge of the nose forward and in, if these are the ears down here, forward and inside, both closer to us if we're looking at it this way, and more narrow, of course, sitting on that like a cap on a bottle or something. So we need to watch that. So that means if we start turning towards a side view, the cheek, of course, is closer to us, and it will start overlapping the mouth and the nose. And notice also that zigzag that we work so hard to understand in the eyes, those of you who are around for that. We've got that eyebrow, and that works, and the cheekbone, and the eye sits inside of that. And we have this wonderful stepping back that we talked about for the eye to hide into that cheek. Oftentimes this will take in a different value because this is all on the front and this is on the side. But how far that zigzags back or rolls back diminishes as that head turns away from a true profile to a 3/4 profile. As it turns this way, we don't have ears on that model, but on that head, but as it turns away, the ear is going to get closer and closer. We can kind of figure this as the earlobe. The ear is going to get closer and closer. Say the ear starts there to the front of the face. And that's what determines it going away, the easiest thing. So I'm just going to look for the ear to get much closer. And I'll look at that sideburn area. If it's a strong perspective, I might even have a thinning, it won't be as fat, it will be more narrowing, I should say, of it. And then the ear is now closer. This distance is closed. And this zigzag has gotten shallower. So now what was a pretty deep crevasse, hollow, to hide and protect the eye from debris and glaring light, now it gets much more shallow. And we might not even see the eye, we might just see the eyelash, a little bit of the eye brow, and just a bare divot for the eye socket. And then the nose would be behind that, and so would the mouth. And the jowl area might even be in front of the chin. So notice these lovely but nuanced overlaps. Overlaps do a lot in a very simple way, although they can be tricky to suss out, to really see and visualize and capture. We're going to work a little bit on that today. But those overlaps do a ton very quickly in terms of showing depth, what's closer to us, what's farther from us. So when we look at this one, we can see exactly the same thing. It's just that, and this is Piazzetta. Let's do this actually. It's a little darker. Hidden within. Coming down, and then this cheek is in front. Nostril sits inside the wing of the nose. And notice what the tones do, and they should do this most of the time. There's no always in art, there's no always in life. But most of the time, the nostril should sit inside the bottom plane of that wing. Oops. And so all these I'm doing, it's somewhat nuanced, although we're slopping it out pretty quick, but somewhat nuanced. So you can see all the subtleties are actually describing very specific, solid, strong planes. So we've got as we looked at last time, the bridge of the nose, the wing of the nose, which is I should call this, I'll call this the wedge of the nose. The wing of the nose, which is a bridge over the barrel of the mouth, although it's split by the septum, which is right here. And then there's another nostril on the other side. And it has a thickness, and that nostril is settled in the bottom plane of that bridge. And then the mouth, notice again, just like the eye socket, how narrow the mouth is. Double check, make sure you're all good there. And then it goes on down, but notice that, I'll play this up a little bit more than Piazzetta did. Notice that the cheekbone settles down into the kind of the sides of the mouth there. The dimpled area is the word I was struggling for. And then the mouth behind that. So subtle, important overlaps. And if we get those off just a little bit, it starts to feel out of whack. And so we'd want to correct. So this actually doesn't push out as much. We'd bump it back and such. But just the idea of overlaps. Think of that. So let's do that really simple so we don't have to try and get the nuances and screw it up like I did, but that's okay. It's good for you to see me draw bad drawings. Just a little eye socket with the eye in there. Eyebrow marks the top of the eye socket. Little bump down in the cheek. Nose is behind, overlapping. Just that idea. Nose and mouth pull together, barrel of the mouth with the open mouth in this case, but just a barrel of the mouth for the teeth, and then a little bit of bump for the chin. And notice, interesting thing, these Rococo artists were oftentimes doing stuff up high on the wall or up on the domed or cathedral ceiling. So they were oftentimes doing models that they couldn't get way up above them always. Excuse me, unless they set them up on a ladder or something. So this guy was drawn at eye level, but you can see by planning to put him up on the ceiling or just by an accident of his jaw and the lighting, we're actually a little bit underneath. The jaw there. We're more underneath the jaw than we are under the eye or the nose. See how that works? So if we looked at this, I'm going to simplify this more. And actually, I complicated it more than it was. Like that. If we looked at that and actually sliced the end of our bucket like that, think of that jaw as the underside of a bottom of a bucket, but beveled. It'd be doing that. So we're a little bit underneath this. and we're really straight on that. So the perspectives are slightly out of whack. Could be the nature of the character. Could be I'm just wrong in saying that, but that's what it feels like to me. And so for me, Piaget is one of my favorite artists. I think he's amazing. But I wouldn't do it that way. I do it a little differently. Even though I love him, even though I would die to get anywhere close to his level of art, I would do that differently. And that's important to distinguish myself from my heroes. Whatever they're doing, take what you love, but look for things you don't love, because that'll help separate you from them and find your own voice. So I steal from everybody, but I only steal little bits and pieces from everybody. So now if we flip over and look at this one, it's a little smaller drawing, so it's a little hard to see. I'm sorry about that. Let's see, that's pretty good. Now the other one we were slightly underneath, even though it wasn't the whole head that we felt underneath of, but it gets the idea across pretty well. This one we're on top. Oops. And it's a little ghosted out, so I'm going to draw this a little bigger and darker so you can see it. Now the nose is coming out this way. She has this beautiful, really back in here more, beautiful hooked nose. Notice the nose is going out that way, although it drops off with the hook. The face just has a slightly lifted chin, lifted up that way. Not quite a vertical. So it's going at a different angle than those things. So for time's sake, I'm just going to stack this. I'm going to give a bit of a manly brow and forehead here just to get the shapes down and clear for us, in case you're on a smartphone or something. Okay, so just where this little tone is, I'll pull it back a little bit. We're feeling the front plane of the nose, side plane, and then the cheeks, side plane again, or side corner, whatever. Like so. And then it pulls on down here. And if I look at that contour of the nose, the nostril, the wing, actually, you have this wonderful contour like this. If you do that, it's going to look kind of funny, isn't it? So when I get something that's really wobbly and weird, or something that's really confusing, or something in a dramatic perspective that's difficult, I'll make it simpler and boxier. So I'm going to treat that nostril, I keep saying nostril, wing, and I'm going to cut right across like it was wood that I'd have to carve out later. And then I really want this side plane, which I found up here, and this front plane, which I found up here, to show up down here. So I'm going to treat all of this as a side plane, and whatever I was doing here, I'm going to do here. And then that's going to be my blueprint. I'll make it like it's shadow so you can see it, for creating tonal landscape and rendering and stuff. So I'm going to pull this up here and here, and it actually drops down at the end there. Make it a little darker so you can see it on camera. And this in here will then get broken. Again, darken it so you can see it. Now notice I'm off a little bit there. It's okay. And notice that if I was really good at linear perspective, they would vanish and converge at some point, probably way off the canvas, maybe off the room or something. I don't care about that because they're organic. They're going to be a little wobbly, but I do want them going in generally the same direction in terms of the perspective. And then this sits here and actually overlaps a little bit. And now I can capture that more nuance because I've put it into a container that I can then chisel out like a wood carver or just observe by comparing it to my kind of makeshift grid here of what's front plane and what's side plane and work that stuff out. It gives me a better chance to get it and to get it right. See where I mucked up. Oh, that should be here. Whoops, this should come up a little higher and then build over, and eventually I can round that off if I need to, or I can keep it a chiseled logic that does what it needs to do. And I'll just pull this out so you can see what it was with the reference we had. Kind of pull it out. I don't want to do it completely. So you can see that's starting to track. And so on. Okay, so that takes a little bit of practice. It takes some observation. But the main point here is when I get into deeper perspective, the proportions of things are going to change. How much we see above the squint of the eye is reduced because we're on top of it. How long the nose is, how short the face is, how close the upper lip. Look at how close the upper lip is. It's such an incredibly sensitive, well-observed drawing. So, really love it. He gets very stylized oftentimes in that kind of big-eyed, kind of over-the-top romantic Rococo style. But this one is really, it has a real reverence for the subject, but also it's faithful and not so kind of, at this point in art history, kind of cliched, romanticized. So I won't go through all this, but the lower lip, the chin, all of that stuff is the barrel of the mouth. It goes way in, doesn't bulge out as much, and the chin pushes out because she doesn't have any teeth. So we don't have that full nose and mouth pushing out that we'll see more clearly when we add the nuances of the mouth there. So when we take those teeth out, those cut in, and the chin, then teeth close, so we lose a ½ inch of space, so it slams shut a little tighter, and that chin pushes up. And we get a little bit more of that Wicked Witch chin. That kind of thing. Okay, so let's stop there. And on this one, let's do one or two more. I forget exactly what I pulled up for you guys. This is Piazzetta's reference, Rick. Piazzetta. Piazzetta. It's an old book that I love. It's all black and white, which is fine with me because I want to draw them and not paint them. I've looked at this a lot. So let's look at this one here. See what this is. I think yeah, that's turning away. We'll let that be. We took care of that. But this one is now more of a profile and we're underneath. So I'm going to do that real quick. Famous last words, huh? Steve doing something really quick. We have that lovely eye socket. We're slightly underneath. A transition of where forehead ends. And where nose begins. The eye socket is setting back in from the forehead, setting back in from the nose, setting back in from the upper cheek area. So it quickly drops into shade. It's the quickest area to go into shade. And then things can pop back out of it, from it. But the main thing is to feel the eye way back in there. So we'll just do that. Sets back in like that. And then as the nose comes down, notice that this is, if we made the forehead follow suit, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to feel that. Let's give it a little bit more shading here. We'll feel that box logic, that we're underneath this, like that. And so we're underneath this too. Going back, if we could see the ears or the ear. Don't see it, and that's okay. So we're underneath the head, we must be underneath the nose. So again, I'm going to look for some tonal change. It might be strong, might be subtle. But I want to show that the nostril is inside that bottom plane. And usually, let's blow this up. Here's the nose. Usually, and here's the tone. And here's the nostril. Here's the wing. I wouldn't do that. Notice that the curvature here just curves to show the nose. And maybe it's beautifully curved and just exactly what the nose is. I still wouldn't do that. I would want the nose, the contour of the nose, to hitch a little bit. Notice how I've made a series of subtle corners. And I'll put, one way or another, I'll put the one set of tones, in this case the shadow, at that corner. That's where it changes from side of the nose to bottom of the nose, and then eventually it comes back out into the barrel of mouth. And I would do maybe another one up here. That's where I put the highlight, if you can see that, at this other corner here. So as the wedge goes from a top plane to a front plane to a bottom plane, the shadows are the tones are gonna show that. Here's the bottom plane. And then the highlight was right at the corner between the top and the front plane, and it's descriptive. So see how that works? So that's what we want to do. We want to have our shadows stick to planes and end at the corners between planes as often as we can. And if nature doesn't give it to me, I'll probably redesign it in. It's that important to me. It might not be that important to you. You might want to keep it a little flatter, a little more accurate to exactly what's going on, a little bit more simplified, take away some of those planes, whatever. But that's more or less the way nature works. Each plane gets a value, or several planes group, and then those planes might be multivariate. You might have corners and chiseled facets and all that kind of stuff, and each one of those could get a different value. Okay, so let's stop there, and I think we'll save the underside of the head, underside of the nose for next week, so we